My name is Jeff Heath. I am the publisher of the Snack Food Wholesale Bakery brand at B&P Media, and it's my pleasure to host this morning's sessions and welcome everyone to the BIF presentation. Meeting after meeting, the Baking Industry Forum, or BIF, presents information that is timely, valuable, and based on real-world experience. Today is no exception, as BIF presents opportunities in energy efficiency. We welcome Robert Benton of Flowers Foods, Jeff Deerduff of Arista North America, Jack Lewis III of Lewis Bakeries, Jeff Teasdale of Pepperidge Farm, and Pat Wilkins of Schweibel's Bakery. Pat, I invite you to start us off.
Good morning. Welcome to the Baking Industry Forum presentation on energy efficiency. I'm Pat Wilkins, Director of Engineering for Schweibel Bakery Company. I joined BIF last fall, and I'm very pleased to see how members collaborate to bring information that will improve both sides of the baking industry equation. When BIF met last fall, we decided to talk about energy efficiency for three reasons. First of all, our larger customers demand it. As bakers, we have to become more energy efficient in order to keep our customers happy. The Walmarts, large grocery chains, and fast food chains are prime examples of some of these larger customers that have modified their sustainability survey to its vendors, the bakers, to include pipeline questions. They now want to know how we track the sustainability efforts of our vendors, which means you, the equipment and ingredient suppliers. Furthermore, you'll see later in this presentation that it helps our bottom line. No one wants to spend a dollar more on consumables such as electricity, gas, packaging, etc. than we have to. Lastly, being green is the right thing to do. We want to reduce our footprint as much as possible in an effort to better our world, lessen our impact on our environment, and hopefully leave our future generations with a cleaner, more natural environment. So what is green? Green is a lot of things, but it ain't easy. And the slide is not lining up. There he is. So to begin, let's discuss some of the terms when talking about being green. Energy efficiency, the energy challenge, energy initiative, Energy Star, carbon or environmental footprint, heat recovery, sustainability, and LEED certification. Energy efficiency is defined as the perfect ratio between the useful output of an energy conversion mechanism and the input of the resources. The useful output may be electrical power, mechanical, or heat. Simply put, it's getting the very most out of every resource we use to generate our products. So in order to create that perfect ratio, the resources used to produce the product produced, we have initiatives like Energy Star Challenge and Energy Star to benchmark our progress. Established in 1992, Energy Star is a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency voluntary program that helps businesses and individuals save money and protect our climate through superior energy efficiency. The Energy Challenge is a call to action. The ABA partnered with the EPA in a national program to improve the energy efficiency of America's industrial facilities. The challenge will recognize participating manufacturers that improve their energy efficiency by 10% or more within 5 years. LEED. LEED certification, the U.S. GBC, U.S. Green Building Council, will award LEED certification to a project if the design and construction process incorporates a sufficient number of strategies developed to provide beneficial environmental impacts and human benefits. So what is footprint? So carbon footprint is defined as the amount of carbon dioxide and other carbon compounds emitted due to the consumption of fossil fuels by a particular person, group, function, event, building, machine, etc. Sustainability is any process involving methods that do not completely use up or destroy natural resources. It can also mean affordable. Now that we've brought a little light to the terms we'll be throwing around, the rest of the team will talk about it into details. Jeff Teasdale will present a segment on compressed air management. Jeff Deerdruff will present on energy efficiency plants. Robert Benton will present on ovens and energy efficiency. And Jack Lewis III will lead a team recapping the findings and provide resources for additional information. Some of the vendors that were involved is Mike Day with Banner Day, Mike Pirel from the Austin Company, Lisa Arado from Zeppelin, Gary Ellington with Quicklock, Jim Warren with Reading, and Clay Miller of Burford. Jeff?
Good morning. Thank you, Pat. And again, thank you to Lisa Arado and Mike Pierce for helping with this section of our sustainability and energy efficiency discussion. Going to speak today on compressed air management. Compressed air in a plant can typically run up to 30% of your electric bill is used to make compressed air. Compressed air is actually a very inefficient method for fueling other devices in your plant. Typically, a 1 horsepower equivalent of an air motor takes 7 to 8 horsepower of air compressor to put the compressed air into it to make it work. So obviously though, compressed air devices have a lot of advantages for simplicity and their functionality. So every decision is a balance of cost, short-term, long-term versus functionality. Some of the basics that everyone just needs to be reminded of: leaks, shutoffs, VFDs on compressors, the obvious things we can speak to. But every time you don't have a compressed air device in your plant, it's a future leak that will not occur. Equipment design, desired outcomes of our compressed air management are to reduce your energy bill for electricity, waste reduction, and cost avoidance. And cost avoidance, when you think about decisions around compressed air devices, sometimes you're never going to decide to replace an air device with something electric or mechanical after you've already done it. But over time, if you make proper decisions based on the right inputs, you might avoid having to add a second compressor in the future as you expand a plant or put more equipment into a vendor's site. Just help them know what their options are as you buy equipment and supply equipment that can possibly over time be a large buildup effect on their bills. We're going to talk about small air devices versus electric alternatives, equipment design decisions. We're going to have an example of a 2-line bakery for the pneumatic bulk handling system, and the thought process when you do a design of a plant compressed air system. Uses some pretty rude and crude examples of compressed air decisions you can make when you're supplying equipment, when you're building a plant. Little air nozzles that say use 20 CFM of air. Maybe you're blowing a tail on a bag or blowing seeds out of a pan. Same for the second example. Replace it with a little miniature blower or a large blower. You can see the cost impact from that device. 77% less cost, 28% less cost. The third example, a Vortec cooler on an electrical panel. Go the extra mile up front and put an air conditioner on it. Over time, it saves a lot of air and a lot of money. Just as a couple notes, the energy rates are based on sort of the Northeast Mid-Atlantic sort of industrial average for electricity, and I think we found it in an EPA guideline, 15 to 30 cents cost for 1,000 CFM of compressed air. It's very hard to actually find the actual cost of compressed air So there's a range you can use to do the math. We picked the middle of the range from the EPA documents we found. This is sort of a schematic of a two-plant bulk system using, pneumatic devices for fluidizing beds, valves, jet filters. There are options for mechanical devices, vibratory, impact without air, mechanical filter cleaning, jet filter, bearing purges, pneumatic vibrators, airline blow cleaning. What we really want to speak to here, you have options when you buy the equipment up front. It goes for any equipment. But as you think through it, this is a bulk handling system for 2-line bakery, 4 silos, 2 use bins, 6 scale use points. If you do your software differently to be more efficient in the air devices you do have, if you make some decisions to do a vibratory bottom instead of a fluidizing bed using compressed air, we came up with a savings of $9,000 a year on an equipment increase of about $7,500 to $10,000 a year. Not a huge amount, but go back to my original point. That's a lot of compressed air that you didn't add to the plant that may also avoid more compressors being needed long term. And again, always, the other side is the application specific. Depending on the materials you're moving, what's really feasible versus that cost also has to be considered, but remember the build-up effect over time. And again, every pneumatic device you have in the future becomes a place to become a leak. Compressed air plant system design. A lot of things to consider when you're building your compressed air system so that you can be most efficient when you operate your plant. This schematic lays some things out. Provide a VFD on your lead compressor. Very easy to do a VFD on a compressor when you buy it new. You're never going to justify it later. So take that investment up front. Receivers, properly size the receivers in the plant to give yourself lots of room for spikes without the compressor having to cycle often. Drains, some automatic drains lose a lot of air. Make sure it's a drip-only drain. Sequencer panel, this is your controls, this is the brains. Spend the money on the brains to make sure everything sequences properly and you don't waste cycles. Pressure gauges throughout to make sure your filters, everything's running efficiently and make corrective actions before you start losing efficiency. Flow control valves to minimize leakages. And out in the field, you can reduce your impact of spikes in field devices by having additional receiver tanks out in the field. So those are some examples of things you can think about as you're supplying equipment to into new bakeries and existing bakeries to help customers reduce energy costs. Thank you. Next up is Jeff.
All right, well, good morning, and thanks, Jeff, for kicking this thing off here and starting to talk about how we use energy-saving design in our new bakeries that we're building. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a case study. A few years back in my previous career, I was fortunate enough to be involved in a bakery build that eventually received a LEED Silver certification. I can't talk directly to that project, but I can talk to the things that we did around that project that relate to the topic today. So I also want to thank Clay Miller for he was my partner in doing this part of the show here. So when we look at a green bakery design, if you think about it, you can probably count the LEED certified bakeries on one hand here in the U.S. So it's not something that is extremely, there's not a lot of brand new bakeries being built these days, but it's something that people consider, obviously, when they go into it. So the first thing you want to do is understand what's required to get a LEED certification. And there's a number of levels that you can be certified. You can be silver, gold, platinum. type things. But there's a couple of things. On the baker side, we have to decide early on if we want to go to a LEED certification, because there's cost. And when you factor it into the build, that cost becomes something you need to get a return on. So there's a lot of consideration as you go into it. As suppliers to the industry, it's always it's recommended, I guess, that you know what goes into the LEED certification situation, so that as you're proposing quoting new equipment, you can also bring some ideas to the baker that maybe they don't know about at the moment. So being up to speed on the things within the LEED checklist, this is a picture of it. It's not clear to see it, but obviously you can go on the internet and see it. But it walks through all the different design functions within a brand new build or even a rebuild. The capital cost, again, for going green, as we say in a bakery, it's extreme. It can be anywhere from an extra $1 million to $2 million just to get certified. From not wanting to get certified to going to certified, it can be a cost. So when you look at the ROI, it's really going to come down to calculations. It's really going to come down to some guesstimates at certain points in time. But the more that you folks can do as you come to it and talk about how your equipment saves energy, it helps move the process along much faster. So there's a number of things when we set out to build a new bakery that we want to consider first off. And one of them is power conditioning. So everybody knows we get our power, off of a grid, and depending on the infrastructure of the local utility, that power can be all over the place. So installing equipment in the bakery that balances that power, that gives you a nice steady phasing across the service, will actually save money. So as you put that into the design, it becomes part of that ROI. Some of the other things you'll do when you're looking to build this new bakery is sub-metering. Now, sub-metering doesn't necessarily save you money. The function of actually sub-metering, it's how you use it. So by sub-metering, and you know how much gas your oven's using, you know how much water you're pushing through a heat exchanger or something like that, you can then take action against some of those usages. So that's another key piece of a green building design. Obviously, we've heard about it for years. The lighting systems that we put in plants is very critical to how we operate, and also how we spend our money around the utilities. The equipment, every piece of equipment, obviously, you know as well as any of us up here that every piece has a drive or some kind of electrical component on it. And where you have a drive, even small to large, putting the variable frequency drives on is very key to, again, that energy saving. You also want to look at heat recovery systems, which we'll hear about here in a little bit. And then kind of a quiet one, but startup procedures. How you start a bakery up at the front of a week or at the beginning of a month or whatever your run time is very critical to energy savings. I can look back on my career, and I know there was times where I used to start an oven up 3 hours before the bread was going to get there, because I wanted that thing warm and ready, not realizing back in the 1980s I was burning gas that didn't need to be burnt. So a lot of things like that are critical. So back to power conditioning. Obviously, power conditioning allows you to have a balanced use of the utility. It helps your equipment down the line operate more efficiently. Motors, drives will tend to last longer because you're not spiking them, you're not changing the phase to them. And even your transformers, getting a good balanced power feed to your transformers will save money on the electric bill. Talked a little bit about sub-metering. Very simple process. Normally, if you think about your house, you got you got your meter outside for your gas or your electric, and we have that in the industry as well. But when you come inside the house, this is putting, you know, a sub-meter at your oven, at your boiler, at your refrigeration system, you know, key places throughout it. I'm actually currently executing on 2 projects at two of our major bakeries where we're sub-metering the whole plant in all the key places where this makes a difference. So we do see an ROI in it, and we hope that comes through. Obviously, as you supply equipment, if you can think about sub-metering as part of the deal, it takes a little bit of load off the supplier. It also, you know, may separate what we call cause a differentiation between your offering and someone else's when you come forward with some of these ideas. So think about sub-metering when you're selling in a big piece. Lighting design, again, you know, this is kind of old news. We've talked about this, and lighting changes. It seems like every year something new comes out. T5s, LED, the picture on the right is kind of the new fad, using LEDs in high bay lighting. And then, of course, the inductive fluorescent type lighting is another option. But basically, this is going to give you an ROI in the fact that it, you know, saves energy, and that's one of the key things, again, not only to the ROI of the build, but also back to that LEED certification. And this is one that, you know, we've talked about VFDs for years, and if I think about, if I was going to ask any of you for a proposal on a large machine, 9 times out of 10, we'll see the VFD for a 100-horse motor or something like that shown in the options. And I think it would be it'd be helpful to bakers if that was laid into the top line. And if somebody is looking at your system and doesn't want the VFD, let them option out. You know, but optioning VFDs into your proposals, I believe right now for bakers is a key piece. Not only does it get more life out of your machines, but it also saves energy back at the bakery. And then heat recovery. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna hear some more about this later. But you burn gas to bake bread, you make lots of heat, and that heat can be recovered, sent back to water systems, glycol systems, and used around the bakery to, again, save energy in other places. Another key piece of the LEED certification. And then the last piece here that I talked about earlier was the startup procedures. So, you know, it really, energy conservation, energy saving starts with the machinery, starts with how we use it, but more importantly, it really ends with people. And it's about those procedures, those practices that are put in place to start up a line, to start up an entire facility on a given day that make a difference in how we save energy. And finally, you know, I talked earlier about the ROI. So, you know, if one of us are going to propose to our groups, our leadership, to do a LEED certified bakery, we have to come to the table with a return. And these are just some of the ideas that would bring that. So the power conditioning, obviously, in energy, sub-metering, more in practices, but then in how you can reduce the usages. Lighting, obviously, VFDs, so on and so forth. So these are truly the ROIs, you know, to spend the money, to go green, to go LEED in that case. So again, I was involved in a project a few years back, and all these practices that I just talked about were utilized in that job. And it has been a success, and it is driving a return for the company that owns the asset, and it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Good morning. That's weak. Good morning. Much better. You know, I wish his name was Alex. I wish he was still in here this morning. And my dad, gave me the same thing when I was about to grad. Well, I think I was in my last quarter of school, and he said, he said, what are you planning on doing? I said, well, I've been interning with flowers, and I really want to go do airplanes, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. My dad says, you got two choices, son. I said, what's that? What? He said, yeah, you can be a mortician, or you can get in that dadgum bacon business. He said, both of them are sure bets. So I did. I love the industry. I love you guys, and it's been good for me and great for my family, and thank for all you guys for what y'all do for us every day. What I'm going to talk a little bit about is I see my Paul and Charlie here. We get talked to a lot about cost, and that's something that we have to live with every day. And what I'm going to talk a little bit about is one of the pieces of equipment in our bakeries that you all probably know what this is. If you don't, you're in the wrong room. And that, again, is our ovens. And I think this particular oven here is a tunnel oven. But you're really not going to bake any bread unless you got one of these in some form. But again, with the oven comes a lot of inherent cost. But when we get ready to put an oven in, whether it be new or whether it be a relocate, like we just got finished doing, you got to look at, what are your operating costs? How can you offset some of these costs? In the long term, can you get something off of this oven to actually give you some payback to it? First thing, of course, that we look at is the cost factors. The fuel, the electrical, and the maintenance. How can we drive those costs down? The first thing we do with all our ovens, whether we are buying a new oven, but mostly, and most of this talk today is mostly about, I'll say our 70, 80 generation ovens that did not have direct ignition, spark ignition on them. That's the very, very first thing we do. We just got finished relocating an oven out west, and we went in and put direct spark ignition on all our ovens. What this basically does for you guys, this is, many of you are involved with providing those goods to us and services to us, but what DSI does for you, it basically, I wouldn't say it revolutionizes your oven, but it sure makes it a lot better, because what it does, it gives you savings not only on the electrical side, but at the gas side also. As you can see, electrical costs continue to rise. And this slide right here, anybody that's got any questions about this slide, you need to see Mike Day, because this is his slide. But, and I can't endorse savings, but actually I can. But as you see, basically, on the older generation ovens, you had an igniter sit there and it fired the whole time. It was constant, and it didn't pulse. It was not on and off. And and that electricity was being used continuously. Basically with DSI, it's on, off, or basically on demand. Again, this is a spot price on natural gas. It continues to rise just like everything else, and especially during these winter months if you're buying spot, now, the other big area, and really the large savings area that you can realize with adding DSI to your oven is the use or the savings of gas. The older ovens, the older generation ovens, basically without DSI, if the burner was lit when you walked by and you looked in there and said, oh, it's good, you may go on about your business and it might go out. If it went out, you're just sitting there and pumping gas right into your oven. It's going up the stack. So DSI basically does away with that. DSI does so many things for you by sensing the volume or the BTUs you're adding or needing in individual zones, whereas with the older generation ovens, it was pretty much whatever's coming out of that burner, Joe, is pretty much what's coming out of that burner, versus being able to modulate. This right here, this slide right here is probably the most important to the baker. The things that this slide really are talking about is the end product. Again, in this situation right here on this slide, the things we're talking about are the actual savings from product, because that's where the rubber really hits the road. When it gets down to the wrapping department, you need to have good bread. You need to have it all to be the same color. You need the wrapping department to be able to handle it, and it needs to be very, very consistent. And again, whenever you're trying to deal with an oven, an older generation oven, that you have an issue of buildup in certain zones of heat and the bread flashes, that bread burns. Then you got another situation where you don't have enough heat in the zone and the bread gets soft. So it was a constant nightmare of trying to figure out the gaps and how to open the dampers, close the dampers. There was always a problem. DSI really has eliminated that issue for us, and it's made it easy for the baker. The next area I'm going to talk about is actually a little bit of a way to create some payback for yourself. We do this more we do this in all of our new installations. Jeff mentioned it. Is basically how do you recover some of those costs with the new ovens you put in. And if you're relocating the oven, it gives you also the opportunity. Of course, there's 2 or 3 different ways to do it. It's probably a lot of different ways to do it. The way we're employing using is basically we take the heat that's being exhausted from the oven and we capture it and in the stack, and we do it 2 different ways. This way is basically using preheating air, and you're using that warm air to go in your ignition system or using different locations in the bakery. The other way, and this is the predominant way we're going right now, is we use a double wall pipe on our stacks. We put a glycol coil inside the inner between the two, and then we have a transfer heat to the glycol, and then we use it in a number of different locations. Mainly we use it for water right now. We preheat for our boilers. We preheat for our proofer. We no longer have the big 150 horse, 2 of them, boilers in our bakeries anymore. We preheat. We actually generate our own hot water. Then, most or all of our new proofers are electric, and so we don't, we use the coils off off the glycol, and again, many different areas that we use this water. This unit actually right here is in construction. That is our Oxford, Pennsylvania location. And of course, the last thing that these guys mentioned, right now, many of you guys know that I've been kind of hanging out in California a lot, and I've learned a whole lot about greenhouse gas. And but again, when you can clean your airstream up by however you do it, but mainly by doing recovery, you sure do reduce those the greenhouse gas. And again, there's just so many good things that, with the green initiatives that you get into, that you can, if you drill down in it, don't expect the paybacks to be 3 years. Paybacks are not. Paybacks, you're looking 10 years, or hopefully less. But you got to do them and to stay around. Somebody else mentioned earlier the customers. Our customers really drill down. They want to know what you're doing. They want to be part of that process, and but that is a very true fact. And again, in recap, we have capital avoidance. Again, when you go in, you add the heat recovery, you can do away with your boiler room. You basically no longer have to worry about having raw steam injected to your proof boxes, the ones that do still do that. A lot of your code requirements, we just walked through with the fire marshal last week out in Modesto, and he was very, very happy. But again, a lot of that's because we've taken a lot of the pieces that he used to worry about, we've taken them out. Again, we really sold to him the DSI. He spent a long time looking at the oven, trying to understand the oven, but again, it made that whole process easier. Maintenance avoidance, again, I keep going back to the boiler. Boilers are an expensive tool or piece of equipment to have in the bakery, and you do away with those. Then again, the energy savings cost, many different things there, but you actually do get some return. And of course, the last thing is the environmental savings. The environmental savings and that approval that you get from the customer base out there, and their appreciation for you being part of that process. Thank you.
All right, I get the easy part. I get to recap. So I'm going to talk about the resources and give you a summary. So summary, and we're being sustainable, so we're going to recycle what you heard. Today, the BFI panel presented multiple strategies bakeries are using to become sustainable through energy efficiency. Together, we covered some of the primary areas of energy use in the plant and ideas on how to make it more efficient. We talked about compressed air. A lot of air in bakeries. There's a lot of opportunities for us in that area. We've talked about equipment design, making them more efficient, and we talked about in total plant design. We talked about energy savings design in our buildings. We talked a lot about LEED, and that's something you got to commit to and make that decision ahead of time, and there's a lot that goes into that. We talked about facility layout, sub-metering. It's not going to help us directly, but it's going to help us to be able to measure and see where our energy inefficiencies are. We talked about power conditioning, the power that goes into our plants. There are savings there. And then we talked about drives and motors, which are everywhere in the plant. We get those right, we get those standardized, all our plants are going to be more efficient. Finally, we talked about ovens, that big monster in the plant, uses a lot of energy, a lot of natural gas. We talked about making them more efficient with direct spark design, and there's other ways there. And then we talked about heat exhaust recovery, which there's a lot of opportunity there, and bakers are looking at that, replacing boilers or using it in our proof boxes. There's all kinds of things we can do with that. And I think, all the examples did a great job of being sustainable, cost-effective, and green. When I think of sustainability, and over the last few years I've been to a lot of presentations about it, they always mention the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I think every study you heard here today fit one of those principles, if not more. Now, I am a baker, and I can be a little dumb, but I can count, and I have a 4th R right there, which is rethink. And a lot of our suppliers, and we have some customers, are starting to add that to the mix. So I just wanted to mention it. I think the other thing is all these examples provided measurable savings in dollars and emissions. What we're being required to do by our customers is report these things. And we need credible and quantifiable numbers when we do. I think most people now are doing carbon footprints and those kind of things. We have customers that are taking our savings and rolling them up into a bigger number. So if we can get those BTUs or those kilowatt hours, first we can convert them to dollars and cents and use that internally for an ROI. But more importantly, we convert it to CO2e, or we can convert it to barrels of oil and trees and tell a really great story to our customer. But at first, we have to have that quantifiable savings to actually make those conversions. And it's something that we're reporting, so we want to make sure it's right. Another thing we wanted to talk about is when you present equipment to us or you make bids, we want the green option. We're all looking at that. I think most bakeries are now. So we want to see that. We want to see those options. And most importantly, and we can't lose sight of this fact, we're doing the right thing, and we're making our customers happy by doing this. As I said, I've heard a lot of different things, and the best reason why to do this I've heard is from one customer. And they basically said, you know, why should you care? Why should we care? And we should care because our customers care. And they're holding us to a higher standard. So hopefully that kind of sums everything up, ties everything together. What our group did is we went back through and we kind of put together some links, some extra information, more details if you want to take a deeper dive into some of this. There's the link up here. We wanted to be green. We wanted to save trees, so we're not going to give you a handout. You go to that link, and there'll be even more links. One of the links leads to stuff about LEED, Energy Star, ABA, that partnerships, all kinds of information. We got a link to the U.S. Green Building Council. You go there, it gives you everything you want to know about LEED. The second link is actually, I want to give you a few sites that's about carbon reporting and emissions. A lot of us are doing that. One's the CDP that I think a lot are doing at the request of one of our retailers. But one of the things we are challenged with is reporting this, and there's a lot of detail that goes into that. It's almost accounting now. So several of these sites kind of give you a link, an idea of how to do that, and if you want to, it gives you a vehicle to report it through a third party. So, with that, we usually get to the Q&A, and I think somebody's going to be Jeff.
Go, Jeff.
All right. You ask questions, we'll answer them.
Jeff, I think we have a few minutes for questions. So
Absolutely.
is that,
Kind of nice to be ahead of schedule.
so are there questions out there for the group? Come on, some kind of question. I gave you so much information. Just a second, here's.
Just to whoever in particular, but maybe to Jeff, when you're talking about sub-metering, are you actually getting to the point, either Jeff, you're getting to the point where you're looking at a VFD and a motor and saying, hey, we've got a, whatever, 25 horsepower motor here, we think we can drop it down to 20 or 15. Is there a payback in doing that?
I haven't come across that situation yet where we've, you know, but to your point of the question, we, as a vendor, we'd like to have you guys do that math and determine, are we getting the most efficient, properly sized equipment, and we're not overkilling it. You know, we kind of intentionally said we're not going to get too deep into right sizing of motors, but we did talk about that as a group at our last meeting. So yeah, that is important and something we expect of you.
So just a little more on the process of sub-metering. What it does do, it can lead to those kind of questions, especially if you're sub-metering against some older equipment. You can then, you know, re-engineer down the road. But what it really does is it drives practices. By this particular system I'm working with right now, so sub-metering throughout the plant, and it's all wireless feedback to obviously a desktop somewhere, and you can actually see live action, you know, of what's being consumed, whether it's water, gas, or electricity. So really, it's as much about driving better practices and how you use the utilities as it is right-sizing your engineering.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Just a little follow-up on that, Jeff. Does that speak to obtaining baseline data so that you have something to manage against?
Absolutely, yeah. That's where you start. So you do get that established, and then obviously you can take action against that.
Lynn, just a second.
From a customer perspective, is the drive for sustainability, let's say, more important to the fast food customers you serve or the grocery chains, or is it about the same across the board?
It's about the same.
Yeah, I think we see it.
Everybody
All-
wants it.
All channels are asking for
all
it.
channels
and,
are open.
It's very important. I mean, anything that touches the consumer, obviously, our customers want to pass that down.
And does that affect your, I mean, if your sustainability level is higher than your competitor, does that move you up into the, you know, I mean, are you usually get a higher volume because of that or some kind of reward?
Well, we do have suppliers and some major retailers that are scoring the different companies against each other, and they have made commitments to using more sustainable suppliers and committing to that. So now I don't know if you've realistically seen that yet, but they keep saying it and it keeps coming down the pike. And I think a lot of us are taking it very seriously.
Yeah, as long as your score is higher and your price is lower, we get the business.
Yeah, that's right. Price still comes into it, yeah.
Isn't that
Another
how it
reason you
works?
want to use trees and
Yeah,
oil
yeah.
too, so.
Continuous improvement is probably the biggest key. Campbell Soup as a whole has a very long window they're looking at for a constant improvement over many years, and that's what we advertise to all of our customers and consumers.
All right, thanks. Just a second. Mike, we'll get you to ask it over the phone.
Hey guys, just how you mentioned it's important for your customers that you are doing these practices. Does it have any benefit of your suppliers that also practice this? I mean, does it give us any benefit for our manufacturing to be LEED certified in the way we process our stuff?
I think all these practices can be considered for any size corporation in any industry, whether it's lighting in your own facilities to, whether you're wasting air and energy. Absolutely, they're all good practices.
And some of our suppliers are spending a lot more time going through the supply chain. They've kind of gotten to us and they're moving farther back. I can tell you this last year I've answered a lot of questions and had to find a lot out about the agriculture of our system and going all the way back to the farms. So they're starting to spread back through the entire supply chain. So yeah, they are getting to those points.
Yeah, we get in such a hurry to build a plant, and we get in such a hurry to do this and a hurry to do that. One thing that the green approach or the energy conservation does is it makes you slow down. It makes you slow down and makes you get to the point of where you really analyze, we have a pretty good model, and we do the model over and over and over again. But what it has made for us is it's made us more thorough. And even though we may not go all the way to a LEED certification, we take pieces of it and, we make those pieces work for us. And
Other questions? Okay, Patrice, just a second.
What are your thoughts on energy management as it relates to dough development from plant to plant and operator to operator, that sort of thing? Large batch mixing.
That's a good one.
yeah, it is a good one.
Looking to make us squirm up here.
Yeah. We built a plant, and then we included inside the matrix of the plant, we put an energy management system. Oven and the mixers are kind of the same. Basically, you got to mix the dough in order to do it. It takes a certain amount of energy to mix the dough, and it is what it is. The question is, what are those practices that are involved with everything from cleaning the mixer to whatever with developing the doughs? How can you save energy in that process? And the reason I bring up the energy management is that, we had a situation where the way the guys were cleaning the mixers, for years and years and years, the way we grew up in the bakery, you basically tilted the bowl over or you got in there and you cleaned the mixer. The way they do it now basically is they fill it up full of water and basically let it spin. And you don't really realize that's a cost. But then when you got a 200 horse motor sitting there running for about 30 minutes, just sitting there, and with the energy management system, we were able to actually see what the pure cost was. Well, we're back to scraping the mixers now. So that's kind of what we do. But no, as far as really just mixing doughs themselves, it's an age-old thing. I mean, a lot of people come up with different type of mixer bars, as to try to get more, but it still gets down to energy. And but That's my take on it.
Yeah, there's so many variables that we try to control going into the mixer. Bottom line is you gotta keep mixing until the dough is ready.
Right.
Other, mixing procedures, whether soaking grains, other things to help get the dough hydrated before you have to develop it, making sure you have cold enough water and so forth. There's so many things. But going back to the earlier question, right sizing the motors is, I think you guys have to tend to be on the safe side to make sure long-term the mixer does its job for, and serves us for many years. So it's a gray area and fine line, if you will, on how to size it right for efficiency, but make sure it serves us for 20-plus years.
Plus, it's got a mix of very wide variety of product. Used to, when we first started in this business, we basically mixed white doughs, and the wheat doughs were basically some caramel color. And but it's not like that anymore. The consumer wants the heavy grains and things, which Terry, this week, we're starting some mixers up out there, and we're really watching, the load factors on these things, and it's amazing the difference between white dough and, say, running some of the heavy grains. I mean, it's amazing the difference. It's 25-30% more load. So,
Jeff, go ahead and close us out. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank the panel for your time, your service. I'd like to thank the suppliers who helped out. And I think we can show a little appreciation for these guys and hard work.